Thank you for all joining us. Before we begin tonight's meeting, I'd like to welcome everyone to our virtual meeting, and I'd like to explain this meeting format. Tonight, we have our commissioners and staff visible on a video feed. Members of the public have been invited to comment on Wheatridge Speaks in advance of tonight's meeting and are also able to participate live through web link or by calling in on the phone. You can find that information on our meeting agenda at wheatridgespeaks.org. All members of the public who are participating live have been muted. When it is time for public comment at the start of the meeting or as part of the public hearing, we will unmute all members of the public, and I'll ask you to speak in order based on the first letter of your last name. When we unmute the public, please keep background noise to a minimum. You may choose to mute yourself through your own device. If you do not plan to participate at all this evening, we recommend you simply view the meeting live by watching on Channel 8 or on wheatridgespeaks.org. If you do plan to participate this evening when we speak, please first state your name clearly, spell your last name, and give your street address for the record. The time limit for public comment is 3 minutes per person. Speakers may not donate their time. When there are no more speakers, I will close the time for public comment and public participants will be muted again. We appreciate your patience with this virtual format. As with our in-person meetings, our hope is that we can create a friendly, respectful atmosphere for public dialogue, and we appreciate your help in this process. Thank you. I'd now like to call the City of Wheatridge Planning Commission for April 15, 2021 to order. Can I get roll call members, please?
Ray Critchiver.
Here.
Jahi Simbai.
Here.
Scott Ohm.
Here.
Christine Disney.
Here.
Melissa Antol.
Here.
Janet Leo.
Here.
Daniel Larson.
Here.
And Will Kearns is absent tonight.
Okay, the next item is the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
Flag
of the
of the
United States of America
America and to the republic
for which
which
it
it
stands,
stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty
liberty
and
and
justice for all.
The next item is to approve the order of the agenda. Before we continue with our agenda, I'd like to explain how we'll be voting on items tonight. Once we have a motion and a second, all commissioners in support of the motion will be asked to raise their hands and to keep them raised and visible until the recording secretary acknowledges that they have recorded those votes. After voting, the recording secretary will read the result of the vote to confirm it has been recorded correctly. We'll use this protocol for any voting scenario tonight. Is there a motion to approve the order of the agenda?
I motion to approve the order of the agenda.
Any a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, call for a vote. Please raise your hands if you support.
Motion passed 7-0.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from, just 1 second here, January 21, 2021?
I move that we approve the minutes of January 21st, 2021.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Please raise your hand. Support.
Motion passed 7-0.
Okay, we are now at the public forum. This is the time for any person to speak on any subject not appearing on tonight's agenda. You have a maximum of 3 minutes to speak. Speakers may not donate their time. Please give us your name, spell your last name, and share your address. We will now unmute all participants. Please keep background noise to a minimum. If you do not plan to speak this time, you may mute yourself through your own device. Is there anyone wishing to speak tonight?
Let me start unmuting folks. I have Christine Wilson with her hand raised.
Hi, my name, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my name is Christine Wilson, last name Wilson. I live at 10277 West 52nd Place, apartment 309. So I am in the Arvada Station Apartments. So I received a letter recently from Kayla Garcia, and she sent letters out, I guess, to the community and neighbors. I received it yesterday, I believe, and it was written on April 6th. And she talks about in the letter that in February they had a meeting, and this is my concerning part. She said, during the meeting, we are pleased to report that we are well underway with completing our noise mitigation and related construction engineering analysis of a state-of-the-art sound barrier and absorption wall. This noise barrier will be in addition to other noise mitigation we previously installed around the equipment that has reduced the noise level significantly, placing us on a path for additional improvement. So I've lived in this apartment, the same apartment, coming on 6 years. And the first, 4.5 years were fine, except for the train that was being built. But then all of a sudden, we're getting this noise, this industrial noise from this glass plant. So I've been pretty vocal about calling and posting complaints on their internet page or whatever, trying to document every single day. I'm a school teacher. I work in Aurora. I'm exhausted. I come home at night, I walk in the apartment, and it's like I just get hit with this sound. It's horrific. I'm across the parking lot, so I'm not right up next to the plant. So I'm back a ways, but the actual sound, it just reverberates off of the glass in my apartment. I'm on the third floor apartment. So I love my apartment, love the view, love where we are, love everything about it. That noise just destroys our well-being on a daily basis. I live with 3 sons. We all, we have to turn on box fans, even when it's snowing, just to drown out the other sound that's coming from the factory. I'm one of the first ones that called because I spoke to the old plant manager who was going to send someone out and do studies or do whatever. The noise, I've recorded it. You can hear it on my phone recording. It's just constant. It's like you can hear it when you're on, and it's not that loud, obviously. It's like just a constant in the background. You can hear it no matter where you are in the apartment. And it's just, I'm just concerned because I think it's gotten louder in the last week.
You have about 10 seconds left.
I'm afraid that I just want them to know, or whoever to know, that, that sound barrier, what if it doesn't do what it's supposed to do? Then what? That's my concern, because quality of life is not good with that noise.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that has signed it? Yes.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and unmute the rest of the folks who are in attendance. Thank you for your comments, Ms. Wilson. If we have other folks who want to talk about the sound wall, if you'll please hold your comments until after we do some of the presentations. If there's anything to talk about on another topic, now would be your opportunity. I don't see any hands raised yet.
Is there anybody else that wishes to speak before I close the public forum? Nobody else?
Nope.
Okay, that concludes the public forum. We have one public hearing tonight. For the public hearing, we'll be adding the appropriate staff and, when applicable, the applicants to our video feed. The screens will be shared as presentations are being made. They will remain a part of the video feed until the conclusion of the respective agenda items. After the presentations, the commission will ask and questions of staff and applicant, and then we will conduct the public comment portion of the hearing. This will be conducted in the same manner as earlier by unmuting our public participants. We typically administer an oath for any participant in a public hearing, staff, applicants, and the public. In this virtual meeting format, we are administering that oath in a different way. If you comment during a public hearing tonight by choosing to testify, you are agreeing that the testimony you give will be the truth as you know it. I now open the public hearing for case number WZ-21-02, an application filed by Noah Guerra with Molson Coors for approval of a specific development plan amendment to allow a 40-foot tall sound wall on property zone planned industrial development and located at 10619 West 50th Avenue, and ask for the staff report.
Good evening, Planning Commissioners. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen of the video presentation, and following my presentation, I'll also share the applicants as well. So hang tight for me for a second, please. Hello, my name is Stephanie Stevens, and I'm a planner with the City of Wheat Ridge Community Development Department. I'm presenting case number WZ-2102, which is a request for approval of a specific development plan amendment for a 40-foot tall sound wall on property zoned planned industrial development, or PID. I would like to enter into the public record the contents of the case file, the zoning ordinance, the comprehensive plan, and this digital presentation. The property is within the City of Wheat Ridge. All appropriate notification and posting requirements have been met, and therefore Planning Commission has jurisdiction to hear this case.
So noted.
The property is identified on this slide with a red outline and is addressed as 10619 West 50th Avenue and is located near the southwest corner of Ridge Road and Miller Street. The site is approximately 27.4 acres in size and contains 4 buildings associated with the Rocky Mountain Bottling Company's industrial facilities. It's surrounded by a mix of long-standing industrial uses. Properties to the south, west, and northeast are all industrial. Properties to the north across Ridge Road contain a fire station, single-family homes, and government facilities. Across Miller Street to the east is in the City of Arvada limits and contains multifamily residential uses and the Arvada Target store. The subject property is currently zoned Planned Industrial Development, or PID, and regulated by the Coors Planned Industrial Development Final Development Plan, which was originally established in 1976. Properties to the south, west, and northeast are also zoned PID. Properties to the north across Ridge Road are zoned PID, Planned Residential Development, and Agricultural 1. Across Miller Street to the east, again, is in the City of Arvada and is zoned Mixed-Use Transit. The planned development process is outlined on this screen and requires approval of an outline development plan, or ODP, and specific development plan, or SDP. An ODP and SDP were both established for this site by way of a final development plan dating back to 1976 with 10 subsequent amendments, and heavy industrial uses are permitted. Final development plans were replaced with the plan development, ODP, and SDP process in 2012. As such, the original final development plan is treated the same as either the ODP or SDP as applicable to future amendments. Since the proposed sound wall relates to the site-specific planning, it must follow the SDP amendment process. It does not qualify for administrative review since walls and fencing were not contemplated beyond what is allowed by fencing code regulations, which only allows walls or fences up to 6 feet in height. Given the size and purpose, staff has reviewed this as a structure, not as a divisional wall or fence. The first page of the SDP is a cover page which includes signature blocks, legal description, and general reference information, as well as the development standards established per the original final development plan. The only new information contained here is reference to the proposed sound wall. No changes to uses or development standards are proposed with this amendment, except to reference the new wall. The second page of the SDP shows the amended site plan and the proposed sound wall location. It includes a site data table which has been updated per sound wall impacts. The third page of the SDP shows an enlargement of the sound wall location with proposed setbacks. As shown, the sound wall is located approximately 39 feet and 7 inches from the northern property line or rear setback. And then on the sides, it's proposed to be 205 feet 10 inches from the western property line and 230 feet from the eastern property line. The last sheet of the SCP shows the sound wall elevations with specific details of materials to be used. This table summarizes how the sound wall meets required development standards pertaining to building height, building coverage, landscaping, and setbacks. The sound wall is proposed to be 40 feet in height and meets all required development standards as shown here. The proposed sound wall is not considered a divisional wall or fence and therefore is not subject to the fencing and wall requirements, and instead is proposed to substantially comply with the Architectural and Site Design Manual, or ASDM, and development standards applicable to building and structures. The ASDM includes architectural standards for heavy commercial and light industrial buildings, including requirements pertaining to facade design, materials, transparency, and screening. The sound wall substantially meets the ASDM standards, but relief is being requested related to requirements for emphasis on primary entries, variation in roof form, limitation on the use of metal panels as a material variation, and transparency. Staff is supportive of the proposed design and exceptions from the ASDM because of the unique purpose of the sound wall. First, it is a structure and not a building, so it's not subject to the strict provisions of the ASDM in the same way as a building. And second, the wall is necessary to achieve noise mitigation, and it cannot be structurally altered to such a degree that its functional purpose would be compromised. The wall achieves the intent of the ASDM by providing base and cap articulation, variation in material and color, and the articulation of base through columns and panels. The planned industrial development also calls for use of earth tones, which is being met. Further details on the requested exceptions can be found in the SDP criteria analysis in the staff report. Staff finds that the requirements pertaining to emphasis on primary entries, variation in roof form, and transparency are not applicable to the proposed sound wall, but some variation is needed to meet the intent of the ASDM and to help achieve the visual interests. Sound wall is proposed to be comprised of all metal panels as needed for structural integrity. That said, the intent of the ASDM has been achieved by providing two panel types with repeating structural elements that vary in depth by at least 1 foot, with 3 different colors incorporated, all in earth tones as required by the planned industrial development. It also has a cornice top which extends outward from the main body of the wall. The applicant contends that adding materials other than metal panels to the noise wall would significantly impact the structural integrity of the wall, as well as prevent it from achieving its noise reduction purpose. Staff supports the requested exceptions and finds the SDP amendment to meet the intent of the ASDM. This is an image of the site section looking south from Ridge Road. As you can see, the site falls significantly below the grade of Ridge Road, so the base of the wall will not be visible. For this reason, staff did not encourage landscaping to be planted at the base of the wall. The city's noise regulations are not located in Chapter 26 zoning code, but rather are established in Section 16 related to unreasonable noise and disturbance of the peace. This code section includes limitations on unreasonable noise for all properties in the city and specifically places limitations for industrial land uses. It also outlines a permit process for special exceptions, and the applicant has pursued a noise permit with City Council, which was approved unanimously on Monday, April 12th. Compliance with the noise regulations are not within the purview of the community development staff or planning commission. However, a noise engineering analysis was provided to prove that the sound wall design will achieve the intent to mitigate noise. Please keep in mind that Planning Commission is responsible for reviewing form, not function, of the proposed sound wall. Since Wheat Ridge is not a full-service city, we sent the application on referral to outside agencies as well as completed an internal review. We did not receive concerns or objections from any agencies. And before the hearing, the property was posted for 15 days and letters were sent to property owners within a 600-foot radius. No calls or emails were received related to the proposed sound wall to date. Before the hearing, the case was published in the newspaper, and this presentation was also available to view on Wheat Ridge Speaks. No public comments were received in person, by phone, by email or on Wheatridge Speaks as it pertains to the proposed sound wall. Staff finds that the SDP amendment meets the criteria of review. It complies with the purpose of the PID and supports more compatible development with adjacent land uses in response to noise complaints. It's consistent with the final development plan, and there's adequate infrastructure to serve the property. It also provides for quality design, landscaping, and architectural standards to meet the intent of the Architectural and Site Design Manual. Therefore, staff is ultimately recommending approval of the SDP amendment. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let me stop sharing. All right, I'll get the applicant's presentation loaded up here.
And for our applicants who are joining us, we will add you to the screen after the presentation to answer any questions that might be directed your way.
All right, I'm ready to share.
Hi everyone, this is Captain Wilkinson with Grey Wolf Architecture, and this is the presentation for Rocky Mountain Bottling Company and their proposed noise wall. This slide just shows the project and where it is located in the metro area. So Rocky Mountain Bottling Company is at the corner of Ridge Road and Miller Street, and the southern boundary is 50th Avenue. The project is adding a noise wall around the existing oxygen plant, which is shown in the red rectangle on the site. And the idea of the noise wall is basically to bring Rocky Mountain Bottling Company into compliance with the noise requirements for City of Wheat Ridge. This is a section showing the site conditions of the existing site with the noise wall added to it. So you can see there's a pretty significant grade change from the top of Ridge Road down to the base of the proposed noise wall. And then down below, the two photos are taken from Ridge Road looking south, just to show you what the oxygen plant looks like right now. The slide is showing you that same view looking from Ridge Road looking south with the proposed noise wall added in to the view. So you can see how that would look and how it would screen the oxygen plant. And just for everyone's information, the noise sources from the oxygen plant are completely screened by the noise wall on this side. So you can see at the bottom, we've made the wall translucent, so you can see what the you can see the equipment behind it in the oxygen plant and how most of it is screened. So this slide is showing an enlarged plan of the site. The red line there is the proposed noise wall. So it's only on three sides, the north, east, and west sides. This plan is north is up. So this slide is showing a closer look at the elevations of the noise wall. So it's the majority of the noise wall is made up of metal panels of different types. And then the metal columns, which are item 1 on the elevations, are just wrapped in metal panel, so they match. So that's those dark brown verticals are those columns, and then item 2 is a horizontal metal panel, and it looks like it's that PBR metal panel. So the first image on the gray side of the slide shows you what that would look like close up. So it's got wider spaced ribs on it. So it's got a different pattern, and that'll be horizontal. And then item 3 is a vertical metal panel in a lighter color with that same panel type as item 2. So that'll look different since it's a different color and vertical. And then item 3 is a horizontal metal panel that's the lightest color. I'm sorry, item 4 is a horizontal metal panel, the lightest color. So it's that PBU metal panel, and it's the bottom image of the two. So it's got closer spaced ribs, so it will look different from the other 2 metal panel types, just to provide some more interest. These are 2 perspective views with some shadows, so you can see the differences between the interior repeating panels and the top and base of the wall. So the design of the wall was intended to mimic kind of a classical building design with a strong base and a top cornice with columns. So kind of similar to like how picture a Greek temple design. It's something that's kind of a classical architecture design. So our intent with the vertical and horizontal metal panels and the 2 different panel types and the different colors was to provide as much interest as we could to the wall with different textures and colors. The repeating panel design is intended to break up the scale of the wall, and the lighter panel interior panels are about a foot in depth, different from the base and the top. Thank you so much for listening to this presentation and watching the presentation. And please let us know if you have any questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, I'll now entertain questions from the commissioners. Please remember to refrain from judgment either for or against the project, and to hold your comments of support or concern until after I close the public forum. Let's start with Commissioner Disney.
Thank you. I guess my first question is, I'm going to assume that a wall such as this has been tried on other projects and has been found to be a successful way to mitigate the noise.
So this is Captain Wilkinson with Grey Wolf Architecture. Steve from Barron's, the noise consultant, can help answer that question.
Yes, hi, this is Steve Kewen, Barron's and Associates. And the direct answer to the question is yes, sound walls have been used extensively around the country to screen noise sources from receptors. And it's been one of the most cost-effective and acoustically effective methods we've employed.
Okay, thank you. No more questions.
Tammy, do we need to get Steve's address, or do you want to get that later?
I can get that later.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Simbai?
Two questions, one for staff. I'm just really interested in that noise permit. I was reading about it. this in the report. Could you just tell me what that entails? What is a noise permit? What does that allow?
So that's directly related to our noise ordinance. So that's in section 16 of our code outside of the zoning code. And it goes directly to city council. So it was an exception request. So it was varying from the noise ordinance. But again, that's kind of not in our purview. And I think the applicant, Steve, their sound engineer, might be able to speak to it a little bit better than I, since I was not a part of that process per se, but it is a noise permit that is an exception to the noise ordinance.
This is Noel Guerrero, the applicant. Can you hear me just fine?
Yes.
Yes, I could speak a little bit to that. So, as you know, the city of Wheat Ridge has adopted a noise ordinance, an official one. Within that ordinance is the ability for a company such as ours to apply for a variance. So we presented that variance to the city council last Monday, our proposal, which they unanimously adopted.
Simplistically for me, does that mean that you're allowed to be louder than what Wheat Ridge currently has in place? Something different.
We are allowed to be a little bit louder within certain very specific guidelines. There is a numerical number on what we were permitted to do. And along with that, there are various compliance activities that we need to take care of on our end. We need to prove compliance once each quarter to the city and then annually after that. And should we not be in compliance, there is further mitigation that must take place within this ordinance.
I appreciate that. I know this is outside of our purview, but I really appreciate that. One other question, and just in terms of constructing this wall, how long does it take to construct, and is there noise mitigation that goes into constructing this wall?
I can tell you from the construction point standpoint, it's about 15 weeks from point of raw material ordering, which there is some significant lead time, to the actual point of construction, the 15 weeks. I would turn it over to Steve Kuhn from Barron's to talk about what construction looks like.
The construction phase, the actual on-site construction phase for this wall is anticipated to take approximately 8 weeks. We will be spending 2 weeks working on the foundation, and the remaining 6 weeks to 8 weeks will be involved in actually erecting and constructing the wall. Now, I think your point was, were we going to be mitigating our construction noise? Is that what your question was?
Yes.
And so, yes, we will take steps to certainly minimize the hours that we are operating. We won't be operating outside normal construction hours. We will take steps to, while we're still operating safely, we will take steps to avoid backup beepers and situations like that. For the most part, our construction is not noisy. Our equipment is fairly quiet. It's standard man lifts and the such. That's 90%, and then some crane work. So there's not a lot of noise that's associated with the construction to begin with.
Okay, thank you very much. No additional questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Christopher?
Thank you. I do have a couple of questions. So in our material, it noted that noise complaints had been increasing over the last few years. Is there any sense of whether the increase in complaints is due to an increase in noise, or is there some other factor contributing to that?
The oxygen plan itself went in 2018, so I think it's in direct response to that newer piece of equipment.
Okay, and so I guess my question sort of underneath that is, is it anticipated that this proposed wall is sufficient to handle, to the extent that there is any increase in noise, to handle an increase in noise? Or are we going to be back in a couple of years with a request to approve some other type of mitigation?
Well, when they came in 2018, we actually didn't have the regulations in place for the noise ordinance. So there wasn't a limitation for the industrial property. So hopefully if they were to come in with additional equipment at that time is when we would catch it and be able to implement mitigation strategies.
Gotcha. Thank you. So our materials also noted that the wall was, I think it said, the proposed sound wall is one of the mitigation solutions. Are there additional other mitigation solutions that are occurring, or is the wall kind of the primary solution at this point?
At this point, the wall is the primary solution. We did some previous mitigation efforts, but the amount of noise reduction we got on that certainly didn't meet our expectations. So we have moved to this much larger and more comprehensive noise mitigation plan.
Great. And then my last question just has to do with the actual form of the wall itself. Given that there's a residential area directly to the north, and I presume that's where the majority of the noise complaints come from, was there any consideration of incorporating some artistic element to the wall itself? Some kind of, I don't know, art project or mural, I'm imagining, for example, when you take the A line to the airport, as you're taking the train through, the sections of kind of East Denver, along the train route, there's lots of artistic elements, even in sort of more industrial areas. And I'm just wondering if there was any consideration of something like that.
I think that it was somewhat explored at this point, but because it is a pretty blank slate as it stands as proposed, there is potential for that in the future. I wouldn't rule that out, but that's not what we're looking at right at this moment.
Okay. All right, thank you. Those are all my questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Antle?
Yeah, thank you. And I think both the earlier commissioners addressed a lot of my questions. And I know the noise piece is not really our purview, but it certainly plays into kind of how the wall actually solves the problem. So I guess I'm curious, was it the change, your operation came in, the oxygen plant came into operation in 2018. The noise ordinance was just approved. So was it the noise ordinance imposed stricter regulations? Or was it kind of the operations operated at a higher decibel than is allowed? I mean, I guess that's the same thing. I guess I'm wondering kind of what triggered, kind of the need for this. Is it that you were out of compliance with the new ordinance that just approved in terms of decibels?
So as Stephanie Stevens pointed out, there was no noise ordinance at the time.
At all, yeah.
At all. So we did noise sampling at that time and found we were in compliance with the 85 dB for a PID, planned industrial. Now, taking all that and putting it aside, whether or not we're in compliance or not, what was more important to us was, making our neighbors happy, right? Our neighbors are also our customers. So this was important to us, and it remains important to us to get it mitigated properly.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you. And I do have questions about that are not our view, but like when industrial is adjacent to residential, are there more accommodations made to reduce sound? So maybe that's, I'd love to just hear about that. But my primary question again for the applicant is, kind of the material usage. Is there kind of documented proof that certain material choices and the way you're designing the wall will actually achieve a certain decibel of reduction? I mean, I know sound walls are widely used, but based on kind of what you've shared with us, will that result in like a 10% increase in noise? Is there a way to quantify the amount of noise reduction achieved?
Steve, do you want to take that?
I think the quick answer to your question is yes, there is a method available to quantify this. I think it is documented in the report that was mentioned earlier by staff. We have tested our sound wall, so we do know how it operates and what kind of controls it makes. The noise is very complicated, and so there is a lot of things that happen when we look at it, but primarily, everything is documented and can be viewed if you want to. It's really outside. I'm more involved here with the actual, design and construction of the wall, but I do know that report describes the methodology we use to assess the effectiveness of the wall. If you want to see it.
Well, and I'm not trying to kind of put anyone on the spot here so much as say, like one of the options showed was kind of like a translucent screening option. And I wonder, is that as effective of a noise barrier as opposed to a different material choice?
I'd like to clarify that. The translucent, excuse me, was not an option. The translucent piece was merely to show you what was behind that section of wall so you could see what noise elements it was blocking.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. But then the materials you use have been proven effective to reduce sound. Materials recommended.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, Commissioner Antle?
And then so just, I think this was mentioned again, but then your approval of this, kind of the new noise permit was contingent on building this wall. Is that correct? Or part of achieving compliance with the new ordinance was to build this wall?
That's correct.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. That's the questions I have.
Commissioner Larson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This first question would be for the applicant, and I am interested in not so much the choice. You've explained pretty well the choice of metals as opposed to what may be recommended in terms of other materials to use to create the wall. But tell me a little bit about the fence itself. You say it's metal. Tell me first off how thick the wall is, and is there a fill in the interior?
No, the wall is, the actual acoustical portion of the wall is 6.5 inches thick, and it does contain an acoustical insulation that is sandwiched between an exterior skin and a perforated liner.
Okay. And the choice of materials, I think you specified it was steel as opposed to aluminum or something?
That's correct.
And why was it durability or why did you choose?
Steel is the most durable material for long-term usage in this kind of environment. Additionally, because it's heavier and denser, it provides better acoustical performance than aluminum.
Okay. And obviously durability is is a factor when you build a 40-foot wall, especially in an open area where you've got wind coming off the mountains from the west. It's got to be able to withstand some pretty strong winds.
Yes, it does.
I guess I should have put that in the form of a question. My next question is for staff, and it kind of the other commissioners are kind of touching on this idea. I think we would like to hear, even though it's not, we're talking form versus function, the function of the wall. The reason the wall is there is to reduce the noise coming off this new unit. If there's a way for staff to tell us, to quantify how much, the new noise ordinance does have some specific numbers attached to decibel limits for this area or different types of zoning. When we look at something like this, you'd like to think that there's a before and an after. Can we get, either a decibel level or a percentage?
Yes, and hopefully the applicant can speak to the current decibel level, because I'm not necessarily aware of that, but our ordinance, and I can share that with you here quickly. A couple of different documents. So our noise ordinance on an industrial property adjacent to residential limits the decibel levels to 55 from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. and 50 decibels from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. And the noise engineering analysis provided. So this was done by an environmental noise engineering firm. So we rely on that professionalism to be able to give us that certainty, but they're requesting a decibel level of, or they requested and got approved for by City Council, a decibel level of 62 decibels. And then I don't know if the applicant can speak to potentially what their decibel level is today, which is causing a lot of the complaints.
So I can really only speak to it in vague terms because, again, we have the construction team here because of the intent of this meeting rather than the analysis team. But I do believe we were in the mid to upper 60s at the receptor, which would be the closest home.
So there is the intent and the result will be that once the noise wall is in place, your operation should not exceed that decibel level going forward. Is that correct?
Correct. When the wall is in place, we fully and firmly believe we will be in compliance with the variance permit that the City Council approved for us on Monday.
Very good. Thank you.
Commissioner Leo? Commissioner Leo, do you have any questions? No? Okay.
We do have, actually our noise consultant is on the line. If you want to unmute him, you can ask Mr. Andrew Truitt some more specific questions about noise level. We can certainly accommodate you with that if you're interested.
Do you know if there's somebody on here with the name Mr. T, and then there's also a phone number, but I don't see the full name. Truitt.
Andrew Truitt would be Mr. T's probably correct.
Okay.
Yeah, he is the 205 number.
Oh, he's the 205 number. Okay. All right.
Mr. T is not Andrew Truitt.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Truitt, if you're on the phone at ending, starting in 205, you're able to speak if you can unmute yourself hitting *6.
Is everybody able to hear me?
Yes. Thank you.
Yes, and before I had noise in the background earlier, so I couldn't get the other addresses, which I will get in a little bit, but I can get the spelling of your first and last name and your address, please.
Absolutely. This is Andrew Truitt, 9536 East I-25 Frontage Road, Longmont, Colorado, 80504. And spelling the last name is Truitt.
Thank you.
So I will say just, I'm unfortunately unable to join the Zoom for whatever reason, but I have the audio. So if there's any questions related to a visual, I may have a hard time responding to it, but I think I know most of this material well enough. So yeah, if I can help provide any clarity, I'd be happy to do so.
Is there any commissioners? Raise your hand if you have a question for Mr. Truitt. Yes, Commissioner Disney.
So as I understand it, the plant had a decibel level recently of the mid to high 60s. This wall is intended to bring it down to 62 decibels in compliance with the sound ordinance. So we're talking about a reduction of 4 decibels.
So let me provide a little context, I guess, to the variance and perhaps the purpose of it. I don't know if maybe any of the staff was privy to the details of the ordinance or perhaps present at the hearing earlier in the week, but regardless, the purpose of the ordinance and the topic that it centered around was what we call ambient noise. So ambient noise is defined as the day-to-day kind of background noise for a given area. And since the start of this project, which I will note preceded the code change, the goal was to get these noise levels down to the levels that existed prior to the addition of the oxygen plant. So we wanted to basically get down to as if the oxygen plant wasn't there. And so we conducted a sound level survey and observed a couple of different shutdown periods of the plant so that we can understand what those noise levels were without the plant running. And those are important levels to note because ultimately it's basically difficult, if not impossible, to prove that something is quieter than ambient. You know, if the background levels are at X decibels, you're going to have a very difficult time proving you're lower than that because you're going to inherently be picking up that background noise on a day-to-day basis. And so that is what really is the crux of that variance request, is that we're requesting an understanding of what that ambient background level is with a reasonable tolerance based on established precedent. And we're saying that we believe that we can get to down or below ambient levels, which is effectively as well as you'd hope to achieve really in any given scenario. So we expect that this will effectively be at those background levels. And I don't have that same data sheet in front of me currently. Let's just say that to the human ear, a 5 decibel reduction is about a 25% reduction. So 5 decibels or $5 isn't a tremendous amount of money, but 5 decibels is actually a pretty decent amount of acoustical energy.
Thank you. Are there any commissioners that have questions for Mr. Truitt? Are there any other questions from commissioners? Okay, I will now open the hearing for public comment.
Scott,
If you
could I
would- yes.
actually interrupt real quick and get the addresses for Noel, Steve, and Catherine?
Are you looking for the business?
All right, I'll
address?
start.
Yes, that's fine. Please. Thank you.
Go ahead, Steve.
Okay. My first name is Steve. The last name is spelled Kuehn. My address is 13806 Inglewood Avenue, Hawthorne, California, 90250.
Thank you.
Okay, my name's Noel Guerrero. Last name is spelled Guerrero. My address is 10619 West 50th Avenue, Railroad Stop 836, Wheat Ridge 80033.
Thank you.
And this is Catherine Wilkinson, WILKINSON. Gray Wolf Architecture, address is 1543 Champa Street, Suite 200, Denver 80202.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I will now open the hearing for public comment. If you wish to comment in this case, you will have a maximum of 3 minutes to speak. Speakers may not donate their time. When I recognize you, please give us your name, spell your last name, and share your address. We will now mute all participants. Please keep background noise to a minimum. If you do not plan to speak at this time, you may mute yourself through your own device. Is there anyone wishing to speak?
I can see 4 members of the public. So if you are joining us through Zoom, feel free to raise your hand and then I will call on you. We'll go ahead and start with Mr. T. If you can unmute yourself.
Hi, Planning Commission. My name is Sean Thiel, spelled Thiel. I live at 5344 Oak Court in Arvada, Colorado, 80002. My question goes to the commission that is studying this noises. So if this is approved, and I understand just in summary that the variance permit has been permitted to 62 decibels, and if this wall does not mitigate it down to 62, what is the Planning Commission prepared to do to hold the Rocky Mountain Bottling Company accountable to bring this down to the 62 decibel level? And secondly, will there be a follow-up study that actually documents and shows that this noise is now at 62 decibels? Thank you very much.
Next up, I have hand raised from Christine Wilson. Ms. Wilson, you are welcome to go ahead and speak again.
Do I need to repeat my address?
I believe we have that from
Okay.
before. Yeah, thank you.
So when I first called several years ago and spoke to the previous manager of the plant, he explained to me that there was something that was that the plant was like doing for the oh gosh, I forgot what the name of it is, but the acronym for the environmental agency, they like were in violation. So they had to add something to the factory, and that's what increased all the noise levels. And so then I was told that because the train was being built, that that's what was making the factory louder. So for a really long time, no one really believed that there was this noise coming out of the factory and that it was like intensive every single day. And so I really appreciate what Mr. T said about, what are you going to do next? But my other thing too is that, I know I'm not a like a homeowner because I moved here and now I'm in an apartment. Some, don't want to own a house right now, but it's like, I've paid over $160,000 since I've lived here in rent. So it's like, I would like to, be considered. We would like to be considered in this area as well. And just like, they said that they were going to send people over and like measure the noise levels. And I truly, honestly believe that there is some kind of bouncing off of the buildings, because when you walk around like when I take my dog for a walk, it's like in different areas of where you are in Nevada Station Apartments, the noise is just overwhelming in some areas and in other areas. And I'm not a sound expert, but it's like, we live with it on a daily basis. And so I would just like, I don't know, I just would like to be reassured that maybe a follow-up for the people that have to live with it on a daily basis. Can we have some feedback, like after the wall is built, like how has it improved? Like, do you notice changes? Like, because we're the ones that have to hear it on a daily basis, and not just asking a sound expert who comes in and says, oh, it's 25% reduction because that's what it, is supposed to do. Like, I would like to be asked, I'm sure the residents in this area would like to be asked if we actually do see a noticeable difference. That's my say. Thank you.
Thank you.
You have two other members of the public in attendance. If you would like to speak, you are able to do so now. I'm not seeing any hands raised.
There's no others?
Nope.
Okay, speak now before I close the citizens forum. I will now close the citizens forum and let's address some of these questions. So the first one had to do with if it's not in compliance with the 62 decibels. He had a question that, what would the planning commission, what would they do? My understanding that this would be a code violation. What would be those repercussions if it was not meeting code?
Right.
If I
So
could,
oh, go ahead, Noel.
I'm sorry, I was going to speak to that. So in that variance, in the last paragraph, again, as I previously noted, we have signed on and we are compelled to do quarterly audits. And if we were found to be in violation, we have a set specified time period to mitigate. And if we don't mitigate, the city manager is authorized to pull our permit. So effectively shutting that machinery down. So needless to say with that, we plan to be in compliance and are very confident of our proposed solution through the Barron's acoustical studies.
That's correct. So the group that would be holding the property owner and operator accountable is the city council and city manager. And while it has been a long journey for our neighbors who are experiencing the noise, we didn't have the tools to control the levels or mitigate noise until the recent noise ordinance was approved. So having that exception permit is actually the tool that we can use or revoke if needed if mitigation isn't achieved. So we have code officers who are trained and now have the equipment to use to measure noise and decibel levels. And I think we feel confident that we're well equipped as a city, far more well equipped than we were a few years ago, to make sure that we're working in partnership with this business to make sure that it's still a livable community in that area.
And then the next question is was there any, there was some perception of sound bouncing off buildings. Is there any studies or truth to that? Maybe Mr. Truitt could answer that question.
Yes, are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Very good. So that's a very good question. So inherently, there's two ways to deal with sound. You can reflect it or you can absorb it. If you reflect it, you're redirecting that energy in a different direction, but potentially making it somebody else's problem. And that's your concrete highway noise barriers that everybody's probably familiar with. Those are reflected. So that concrete is doing nothing to actually absorb and reduce that sound energy. It's simply redirecting it in a different direction. And so we intentionally did not take that same approach for this particular project. What this wall incorporates, and what Mr. Kewen outlined earlier, was basically a 6-inch deep absorptive cavity. And what that cavity allows is for the pressure waves to basically pass through that perforated liner within the wall and actually be absorbed within an acoustical media that actually is contained within the wall. And so we're not just simply redirecting that sound in a different direction. We're actually transducing that energy and getting rid of it at the source of the wall. So it's a fair question, and if not treated properly, then yes, you're just creating a problem for maybe somebody else, but solving it for another. And so we purposely spec'd an absorptive wall for that very reason.
Thank you. And then this might be a question for staff about follow-up readings and like a follow-up study. And it sounded like it was to is it primarily Arvada citizens that are north of that railroad, of Ridge Road?
I think we're mostly getting it from the east,
Okay.
to my knowledge, to the north and east, but mostly the east. I think the multifamily.
And how would we, is that something that the city would wait for a complaint and then they would take a reading after the wall is built to see if it's in compliance?
Yes, so I think as Noel, you can probably speak to this, but they have specific requirements for monitoring. But if we did get a complaint, one of our code enforcement would go out to do a reading based on the complaint itself. But Noel, if you want to speak to your monitoring, that would help.
Yeah, that's correct, Stephanie. So in the first year, we are compelled to take quarterly sound readings, which we will be submitting to the city to prove that we are in compliance. After 1 year, we then go to annual testing, as far as I know, in perpetuity.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions from the commissioners to staff or the applicant? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Thank you. I move to recommend approval of case number WZ 2102, a request for approval of a specific development plan amendment on property zoned planned industrial development located at 10619 West 50th Avenue for the following reasons. First, the specific development plan is consistent with the intent and purpose of a planned development as stated in section 26-301 of the city code. Two, the specific development plan is consistent with the intent and purpose of the outline development plan. Three, the proposed uses are consistent with those approved by the outline development plan. Four, all responding agencies have indicated they can serve the property with improvements installed at the developer's expense. And five, the specific development plan is in substantial compliance with the applicable standards set forth in the outline development plan and with the city's adopted codes and policies, with the following conditions. Prior to construction, a building permit shall be subject to review and approval by staff and shall be consistent with the representations depicted in the SDP.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? I know that Commissioner Christopher was asking about art, and my experience has been with that ribbed metal. It's usually kind of tough to paint over that. It's probably something good that would keep graffiti off, you know, because it's just, if it's going to be that angular type of metal. Otherwise, I would have concerns over graffiti because it's basically like billboards out there. I don't know if the applicants have any concerns over graffiti, if they're using any type of anti-graffiti paint, or if that's raised by staff, but that would just be my comment if they had any concerns. I did have an idea if, you know, it would make sense to have any type of, you know, trees, you know, halfway up. It looks like there's approximately about 20 feet of grade. If you're looking right at the railroad, it's like 20 feet above that. And, you know, what if you did put some trees in there? But the trees will not, you know, they would mitigate aesthetics. They do not much in the way of sound. It would just be purely for aesthetics. But then the other issues is any type of, you know, probably some type of pine tree, and then I just don't know if that would start creating some type of habitat for barbers and stuff at the base of the wall. But I did make those considerations. Does anybody have any other discussion before we call for a vote? Okay, call for a vote.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
if I
yes.
just real quickly, I'd just like to recognize the applicant for the work that they put into this and the fact that they've worked with the city both on the request for permit and then working with the Planning Commission on adopting this. It's a fairly long, complicated process, but I think it recognizes their concern for the neighborhood. And I also want to recognize the patience of the people that live around there in going through, going through this process that we have to go through. But I think we can assure them that there will be some relief, and this sound wall, everything that we've heard tonight indicates that it will do what it's supposed to do and reduce some of the excessive noise that the neighbors are experiencing. So again, I'd like to recognize the company for what they've done and recognize the patience of our neighbors around there in kind of as we go through this process. But also that we did hear that if there is a complaint, once this thing is up, that they ought to call the city of Wheat Ridge and that their complaint will be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, call for a vote.
Motion passed 7-0.
Thank you, everyone. We will now move on to old business.
Thank you. Yeah, let me, I'm gonna escort our applicants back into the attendee list. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you for your confidence.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. So, old business, new business, I'm not sure exactly where this falls, but we have 4 things that we were remiss in not putting on the agenda. So we just got maybe 15, 10 minutes more of your time. The first thing that we need to do is elect officers. You'll recall that last year we were just launching into COVID and virtual meetings. We didn't know how long that would last, and we deferred the election of your chair and vice chair positions. Now it's the time to traditionally elect those seats. It happens after council appoints new positions to the board in March. We didn't have any changes in positions, but this is the next meeting after that. So we're compelled to do that, and we have figured out a process. I did send a link to all of you by email, which will allow us to do the secret ballot process that is required by your bylaws. So if you want to take a minute to pull that up, or I can resend it if we need to, if it's not immediately available to you on a phone or tablet or in another browser window. I'll just recap the bylaws real quick. So, oh, and maybe just to give you a preview, we're going to do voting, and then we'd like to give you an update on the Lutheran campus master plan. That's another email that we sent. We'll share the dates that we know are upcoming for meeting dates for you, and then give you a quick update on a couple development projects in the city. So that's the balance of our agenda for any of our public who's sticking around. So your bylaws outline the process. So we can, while we don't have a full 8 members present today, we are allowed to vote with fewer than 8. You can elect anybody who's present or not present. Let's see, we hold the ballot by, or the election by secret ballot without nomination. And so traditionally we have done that by just writing on a piece of paper and you pass it down and staff counts it. So we'll mimic that through that link that I sent you. If there's a tie, we keep voting by secret ballot until we have one person with the majority, and then we do the same exact process for the vice chair position. And as a reminder, essentially the role of the chair is to facilitate the meeting, and the role of the vice chair is to facilitate the meeting in the absence of the chair. No further responsibilities. We do provide a script and any guidance that you may need. So you've all, in our eyes, you are all well enough qualified to do the job, so don't be nervous. What I'm going to do now is open this polling tool that we have. Has anybody had trouble with that link? Do you all have that link? And if so, are you seeing? Yes.
I'm seeing what it is, but I don't see a place to vote. Have you just not activated it?
I haven't activated yet. Yeah. So I'm going to advance to the next slide, which is a test question, just so that you get used to this. So you should all see a question that course, the language isn't in there, but pick a dot and hit submit. That will be exactly what we'll do once we get names on. So I can see the results on my end. And I'll wait to advance the slide until I have 7 respondents, knowing that all of you have gotten this to work. So I have 6 so far.
Where did you find this, Lauren? I've never heard of this.
Mentimeter. You know, with COVID, there were lots of different platforms that sort of exploded all over the place. And this one is one that was used in a webinar that I had done a while ago. And it's been pretty helpful. We have the free version, but the pro version is pretty neat too. And it's got some good data visualization, which has been fun. I'm still only seeing 6, so I want to make sure everybody's been able to figure it out. If you feel like you were able to.
Do you want us to, since this, you want us to raise the hands of who's voted so you know who hasn't? Or do you think?
Well, the hope was that because it's a secret ballot, we'd have 7 votes.
Yeah.
Is anyone having trouble? It's okay. It's just a color.
What am I supposed to see? Oh, I see colors in circles.
Yeah. So click a dot on any color and then hit submit and then see if that works. This was just the test question so that we didn't have to read it. If you pick a color, Janet, and then you scroll down, do you see a blue submit button? Perfect. All right, now we're gonna go to the real thing. So for this, you should see the names of 7 of you. One of the bylaw rules is that you cannot have the same position 2 years in a row. So we waived that rule last year. So Scott's not in this list of eligible candidates, but if you would please select somebody to be this year's Planning Commission chair. Just click the dot and hit submit. I have all 7 votes in, and Mr. Larson, you will be asked to serve as the chair for the next year, please.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then this is easy. I didn't know if I'd have to change the slide. Dan was our vice chair last year, so he's not on this next slide, which asks the same question, but for the vice chair position. So hopefully you're seeing a new slide. This is working beautifully. Thank you all. And Commissioner Simbai, if you would do us the honor of being the vice chair for the next year, you have the most number of votes for that role.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Okay, this worked. We could have done this a year ago, huh? Thank you for bearing with us in this, again, a new virtual tool.
Hey, Lauren, so I've made a couple small, very, very minor changes. I will send you that Word document.
That's great.
It was just little stuff. I just was looking for language where it said like public forum versus citizens forum, and it did have some info on there that talked about like it referred to secretary as she. I just took that out.
Perfect.
But yeah, then if you could take a look at that and then distribute that to Dan and Jahi, so you got your eyes on it.
Yes. Yeah, I appreciate you doing that. And thank you for your fearless leadership of this group in our very extraordinary last year, and the year before that felt more normal.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
I would definitely second that. I think, Scott, you've done a tremendous job over the past year, and believe me, we really appreciate the service.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed working with everybody on the Planning Commission. This will be my last year serving on the Planning Commission. So I will be done next March. And I'm very confident in everybody that's on the Planning Commission right now, that all of you could serve on the chair or the vice chair, and really appreciate staff, making that script. And it's been pretty smooth sailing. I was telling Lauren before the meeting that I just attended another city's planning commission, and they did not have this, Wheatridge Speaks type of deal. And anytime they wanted the public to weigh in, it was like, well, we'll be back in 5 minutes. And it's like, it's this kind of awkward silence, and you don't know that contrast until you kind of see that. It was just like, I just thought like, man, it's really smooth. Just everything. It's just been really, really smooth. So thank you everybody for that.
Yeah, I don't really want it to go back to the old normal. It's been good so far, especially on a snowy day like tonight, right?
Yes.
So thank you for going through that process. The next thing we wanted to talk about was to follow up. Stephanie, are you still there? Perfect. So we sent you an email, lengthy, I know, an email about an exciting new project that has finally kicked off. It's the master plan for the Lutheran Legacy Campus, we're calling it. We don't get to do master plans every year in Wheat Ridge. So this opportunity, not only for the property specifically, but also the process is exciting. And Stephanie is our city project manager. We also have a consultant project manager. And we just wanted to walk through some of the content and highlight some of the things that were in that specific email and let you know sort of what your role will be as the Planning Commission as it relates to that guiding document.
Yeah, so we're really excited. This is going by the name of Lutheran Legacy Campus Master Plan. It will ultimately be an amendment to the comprehensive plan. So you are decision makers in that role as Planning Commission. So you're wearing your Planning Commission hat for this whole process. It will come before you in a couple of study sessions, one coming up here in May, I think another one slated in August, and then adoption hearings where you will be a recommending body to City Council in October. And we've officially kicked off, just recently started kind of the public process of the whole thing. And I was gonna share with you the What's Up Wheat Ridge. Lauren did provide a great background of where we're at in the process, so I won't go over everything with you. But here is our What's Up Wheat Ridge page, Lutheran Legacy Campus Master Planning Process. This will be our main tool to guide people to engage in the whole process. A lot of what we're doing is virtual. However, we do have our first in-person self-guided campus tour coming up here on May 1st that you all are invited to. And I would encourage you to jump on this page, register to get involved, subscribe for updates. That will provide you with any newsletters that come out, such as advertising that May 1st campus tour date. We have focus groups that we're starting to get interest in, but just an FYI, the Planning Commission will not be able to join our focus groups or stakeholder groups just because of your Planning Commission hat, since you're deciding on the whole plan. But you can come to public meetings and you can engage in the surveys and the online activities that'll be coming your way. So the page has a lot of background info on the master planning process itself and how it falls into, the comprehensive plan, being a guide to future entitlements. So we're not addressing zoning or anything yet. And then our public process, which is probably very helpful for you all as it kind of marks out what you will be seeing. So I think May 6th is what we're planning to come to study session with you all, and then May 10th for council for the first one. And then in August would be the second one, and that one's bringing preliminary recommendations to you all. A lot of those study session portions will be informative, kind of where we're at in the process, not so much voting on anything at that point. But then those adoption hearings will come in October is the hope. So this is about an 8-month process. There's lots of frequently asked questions and things on here. And then right now we have an active storytelling activity that was kind of our first engagement opportunity for everybody. We've got 1 respondent so far. This site was just released about 2 weeks ago. So we're hoping to get some more feedback, and stay tuned and come to the event on May 1st, please. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have right now, but Lauren's email had a good background too.
Stephanie, one quick question. For the event on May 1st,
yes.
Will there be donuts?
Good question. We will have like bottled water and maybe some snacks that will be all COVID friendly. at this point.
Thank you.
Everything's got to be packaged. So unless they sell individually wrapped donuts, not allowed. One thing I wanted to add, because this is a project that has just such a citywide impact, sometimes you define like a study area and then a notification area. In this case, this is really meant to be a citywide process because we think there's so many people that would be impacted or interested or drive by or frequent. So we're not doing direct mail to the whole city. We're using every other possible communication outlet that we have, including word of mouth, which is repeatedly sort of how our Wheat Ridge residents tell us that they get their information. So we'll continue to send you graphics. So for the upcoming tour, we'll send you a little square graphic that we have. If you want to email that on or post it onto any sort of social accounts that you have or print it out, so that we can ask our engaged citizens like the commission and other boards and commission members to help continue to get the word out on some of our activities that are coming up. You can.
Perhaps we should engage the gossip spreaders in that activity too, because I've already heard all kinds of stories about what's going to go in there.
Sure. Yeah, there's always, our public information officers are tracking social media. We don't have direct access into that. So we do what we can, but myth busting is always a part of the process for sure.
Is there any other new business?
The only other couple of things we have, so dates wise, May 6th is that study session, and it will be exclusively dedicated to the Lutheran plan. Stephanie will be here, our project, our consultant project manager will be with us as well. We have not confirmed, but we may very likely have the May 20th meeting. We'll let you know by the end of the month if we need that date. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about, Commissioner Larson and I were talking earlier this week, and he had a good idea that is very much aligned with other sort of input that we've had from some other processes. Dan was asking if we could do more of a routine update on development projects. You guys see projects at a very specific sort of point in time, and then they continue on for months or sometimes years after that. So we want to make sure that you sort of, if you're not driving by, you're still getting an update on sort of where the projects went after they came to you, but also just other types of projects around the city that may be either hot topics or, Lucky's comes up sort of every time. It's very consistent with a council priority that was recently established. So City Council has a retreat every couple of years to come up with some strategic priorities. This year, they had 8, and one of those was to work on sort of better communication and education. That same feedback came out of our last Let's Talk Blitz. So just a desire to have more sort of, I think, self-serve information. One of the things that we're working on to that end for the community as a whole is some more interactive maps where if you drive by and see something, whether it's road construction or shovels in the ground, you can go and try to figure out what's going on there before you have to call or come by. So we're certainly working on improving transparency and availability of information and people to sort of find what's going on. But what we'll also do is add at the end of each planning commission meeting, I'll either bring a few addresses or projects to give you an update on whether it's project or development, or if you've ever got something on your mind, feel free to shoot me an email the week of the meeting. I know a lot of things, but I don't always know all the answers, particularly if it's under permit or how far it is through inspection or with our economic development manager and leasing. So if you give me a heads up on a specific project, I can always bring that update. So today I just picked them myself. The first update I want to give you on is the Let's Talk program. So we successfully completed that first Blitz, which was a 3 or 4 month intensive engagement in the Bel Air and East Wheat Ridge neighborhoods. You may have seen that we gave that update to council on April 5th. That council packet was about 300 pages. The reporting and the data that came out of that engagement was incredibly robust. Every comment, every meeting summary are included in appendices in there. And we have just now started this week the next 2 neighborhoods. So if you're in those neighborhoods, Applewood is on the west side of town. We're defining it as the area west of Parfait, south of Clear Creek. And then Lepla Manor is in the northeast part of the city between Wadsworth and Harlan and north of 44th. So we start every blitz with what we call the Prime the Pump survey, just a few open-ended questions to try to get people thinking about what they love, what they need, what they wish was different in their neighborhood. And that is now live on What's Up Wheat Ridge. So the same page that Stephanie had pulled up is just www.whatsupwheatridge.com. And then the next project update, Clear Creek Crossing. We could probably do an update on this every time we meet. From a development standpoint, you may have seen that the Come and Go is open. It's a bit of a unique gas station format. The inside, it's sort of more like a Wawa's if you're familiar on the East Coast. So it has more fresh food, fresh pizza, a little bit kind of a deli counter. They're open now. Foothills Credit Union is very actively under construction. That's on the north side of the hook ramp. You will see the specific development plan in the next month or two for the hospital campus. And we've got 2 other specific development plans that will come to this year. The retail, restaurant, and hotel components, they were all put maybe a little bit on a slower track during COVID, but they're still active applications. And then the apartments, you saw that application last year, and they have been very quickly under construction. You'll recall that it was comprised of multiple different buildings, and they have gotten their certificates of occupancy for some of those buildings. And I think, Stephanie, didn't you say 25% leased up already?
Yes.
So moving quickly, lots of interest. We were out there a couple weeks ago, maybe doing a little tour, because we too like to see sort of the final product. So I'd encourage you to drive by or sort of walk through the really nice sort of community area that faces west on that project.
Just to add, I think we're close to, I think we're at about 5 certificate of occupancies issued out there of the 14 buildings, and 2 more inspection requests just came in this week. So they're going to be moving quickly from here on out.
Yep. They're doing, now that it's snowing today. I was going to say, now that winter has passed, they will be soon ramping back up on the ramps. There's a bridge and a flyover that has to get finalized as a part of that infrastructure project. So you'll start to see some more construction on the interstate as the weather improves. And then at the corners, I was going to mention, some of you heard me before the meeting started, but no news on Lucky's being backfilled, still talking to tenants. The Edison is getting closer to finalizing. They were shooting to open with their first residents moving in June. So in the next month and a half or so. And then the last project I picked, because you may have seen some activity, 32nd and Kipling. So it was the northwest corner. You saw the subdivision plat. It was an R1 subdivision. I think it was maybe 14 homes, and they have received their site work and right-of-way permits. So very active construction. They were doing some work on the Kipling side of things, some night work, and are now doing a lot of the infrastructure work. So utilities, that main road, cul-de-sac, and a lot of the ditch work and tree work. They're compelled to get a lot of that ditch work done before the ditch starts to fill with water as the snow starts to melt. So they're moving pretty quickly on some of that.
And then what about Golds?
They've been under construction. I know that they're talking to specific tenants because they had some specific questions for our building code guys, I think, as they were exploring potential tenants. So they haven't announced anybody yet. But the level of detail of the questions would suggest that someone was serious about backfilling sort of that main anchor spot where the grocer had been.
I thought a coffee place was going in there.
They've got a bunch of tenant spaces, so that may be one of the components, but I don't know that they filled the big space above the bowling alley. Yeah.
I know the parking lot just got finished on the upper.
Transformation from how it used to be. Yeah, it's exciting.
And Lauren, can you tell us about occupancy of the townhomes on 44th near Heine's?
Sure. So you'll recall that there were 2 projects that were connected by a drive. So one was on 44th and one was on Tabor. And the units on 44th are called Riverside, and those are done. It's 3 buildings of 6, 18 units. And then the portion on Tabor, I believe the first CO is going to be signed here pretty soon. So they're not quite done with all the construction interior to the site, but they've got a bunch of residents, I think, in Riverside, and a bunch of projects or units under contract.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, I can, if you've got specific projects you're interested in, let me know. I can bring a slate of other projects, some of our townhomes, a lot of the residential around the TOD area, super busy construction. We can look at some of the updates from that, and I can bring them next time too.
Lauren, it looks like there's some activity on that land on the east side of Kipling before the highway. That large.
They did a lot of clearing of trees, dead trees, I think. It's the portion that's sort of between the Shell Station and Kettleson Campers. That's zone mixed use, and they have a concept plan that was approved. Their next step will be to do a subdivision plat. That will likely be a major subdivision, so it would likely come to you. We have not pre-apped for that yet. It's an out-of-state owner, and I think they were pretty significantly slowed down by COVID because of some of the folks that they had lined up were either not interested or needed to sort of see where things went. So we don't have any specific site plans or users or subdivision yet, but they'll have a couple processes they'll have to go through before they can ever break any ground.
Very good.
Yep. Yeah. So a good addition to the agenda. And again, if you've got a specific project you want me to look into so I can have a more specific answer, please just shoot me an email. And that's all of our updates on everything. Thanks for that.
Thank you. That was a good idea. I appreciated that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Good idea. Yep. Okay, any other thoughts or questions? Is there a motion to adjourn?
A motion to adjourn.
Second? Is there a second? Okay. Call for vote.
Motion approved, 7-0.
Thank you, everybody.
At home.
Good
Thank
night.
you.